multi-part series. And so after this session, session 3, we plan to have another installment, so a part 4 in September. So be sure to get your calendars ready at the end of this so you can jot it down and join us next time. Next slide, please.
Sorry. So International League of People Struggle, or ILPS, is a global alliance of over 40 countries and 350 organizations. We unite against the most specific enemy, which is US imperialism, in order to create as large a coalition as possible to coordinate and build the anti-imperialist struggle around the world. We'll share social media handles at the end for people and organizations to plug into the organizations mentioned today, so that you all can have more information and resources to dig a little deeper into ILPS and the anti-imperialist movement.
Cool, thanks, Irene. And so we're getting into this next portion, and if folks aren't familiar with what imperialism is, I'm gonna break it down. And if you have more questions, definitely feel free to ask in the chat or get connected with one of the folks you see on your screen today. And so I'm gonna go over like how ILPS defines imperialism. And we see it and view it as the most advanced stage of capitalism. Capitalism being an economic system where imperialists take control over the economy, they take over political control and cultural aspects of society, really through any means necessary. And we see it manifest in the creation of like monopolies of control over society. And at its worst, and the reason why we say it's the most advanced stage of capitalism, is that it gets to the point where rich countries like the US exploit poor countries for cheap labor and resources at the expense of the people. And so another part is that the control and the profit and power are in the hands of the very few monopoly capitalists, the imperialists, where there is so much rivalry and competition to extract resources and extract power, political power from different like countries. And so this results in conflicts and wars, and this is very, very prevalent and is an ever worsening crisis of our society. And so we know as ILPS, as an anti-imperialist alliance, the only way to defeat imperialism is if we collectively unite. And so I hope that as we continue on today, we'll understand like really how imperialism can manifest, and understand the solution is an organized force of all of our national liberation struggles and colonized people. So, yep, that's imperialism. And we can totally dig into it later too. But we'll go to the next slide and I'll pass it off to Irene.
Thanks, Fran. So we also want to define national liberation, so you all know what we are working towards. So national liberation is the revolutionary struggle to take the economic, political, and social control of a country out of the hands of a foreign power to establish the sovereignty of the people. National liberation is the common goal of many colonized people around the globe fighting against imperialist powers. So often when we speak of imperialist powers, we're talking about the so-called United States in particular, and the imperialist power it has across the globe. Today and this evening, we're going to see the commonalities between the national liberation struggles. We'll be working through 3 different struggles, learning about them. But of course, there's multitude of struggles, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss what ties these struggles together and what we can do to work in solidarity to harness our collective power.
So sharp, co-MC. Yes, our next slide is just going over the really incredible speakers that we have today. We're going to start off with Song to See, following with Black Elephant Party, and then lastly, we'll have somebody from Oromo Youth Association speaking with us today. And so, yep, these are our speakers. And can we go to the next slide, please? Cool. Looks like we have a cultural break as we segue into our first speaker from Song to See.
Tiết rét ban ngày chẳng cần phải đoán xem ai đang say, chẳng điều gì mới vì là anh thôi, chờ đợi em không lái suốt cả cuộc đời, chờ anh theo với cùng đi muôn nơi, dài dày trong chính trái tim biết nghe lời, và bởi vì cho đến lúc mất đi mới thấy lo, chừng nhớ đến những gì mình đã có. Lâu lâu anh cũng biết đâu anh chấp nhận sẽ đứng phía sau, niềm vui nơi em luôn mãi đứng đầu. Nếu ai đã dòng chơi chán chê, phải nhớ tôi để về là vì yêu một người chẳng có để một mình anh lo. Cái gì nhiều sóng gió chỉ là em không vui. Bingo, yeah. Cuộc đời này chẳng phải là phim, thế nhưng anh vẫn đúng người mà anh cần tìm. Cho đến lúc mất đi mới thấy lo, chừng nhớ đến những gì mình đã có. Không sao đâu nắng mất trên người ta, chuyện gì cũng qua anh chẳng bao giờ nói dối. Anh sẽ luôn là lý do xua nhẹ đi mọi biến tao, cho bờ môi đó sẽ mãi tươi cười. Anh vẫn luôn là lý do che chở em khỏi bão táp, cho bờ môi đó sẽ mãi tươi cười.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you folks from Song to See for sharing this like really incredible, vibrant cultural with us. Really great way to kick off the evening. And so if we can get the slides back, I'm gonna intro Song to See really quick as we get that set up. So for our first speakers for today, Song to See is an organizing home of people in diaspora with ancestral ties to Vietnam. Oh, so sorry. With ancestral ties to Vietnam, who currently live or have lived in the Puget Sound Coast Salish territory. They ground themselves in studying their history, theories of socialism, Marxism, colonialism, imperialism, principles of abolition, and critical theory on race, class, gender, and ableism. These provide the framework for us from which to build our praxis for organizing and solidarity. In Vietnamese, the word song means river. They chose it to represent the many waterways that flow through Vietnam and connect to the Pacific Ocean. Rivers are a source of life, movement, and human connection. We extend that spirit through education and community work. And lastly, they seek to build a world where humans can have non-exploitative relationships with each other and with the earth. They want to build community with those who want to deepen their understanding of history, racial capitalism, socialism, Orientalism, and overlapping systems of unequal powers. So please give a warm welcome in the chat for Song to See.
Great. Thank you so much, FJ. I'm going to introduce myself really quickly, and I'm just going to go straight into it because I actually prepared quite a bit of material to share with everybody today. My name is Nikki. I go by they, them, she, her. I'm part of Some to See, and I'm going to share my slides and go straight into our presentation today. I'm coming. It's not showing the tab that I want to share, so I'm going to
do it?
try again. Let me try one more time, and if I can't do it, then I'll ask for your help. Okay. Oops. I'm a little nervous. Can everybody see my screen? Cool. I'm also gonna not be looking at the camera, so I apologize, but I prepared a lot of notes. So I'll be reading from my notes. Just want to start with mentioning that a lot of concepts, a lot of words that you hear may sound the same, but the context and the background and everything surrounding is not the same. So just be mindful of that because I've heard of concepts that are very specific to the history of North America be used elsewhere, especially in Asia. So just want to ask folks to be mindful to apply these words using historical materialism. First, I'm going to talk about who Viet people are. So the ancient Viet people are part of the Bayou, meaning Bat Viet. Bat means 100, so it's 100 U peoples. And this just means that there are a lot of distinct and different ethnic tribes, ethnic people who live south of the Yangtze River down to present day northern Vietnam. So you can see here all of these different U groups of people. According to the creation myth of our people, there's a mountain fairy named Oka who married Lak Lam Wurng, who is essentially the dragon lord. And they bore an egg sac, or essentially she bore an egg sac that hatched 100 children. And they're considered the ancestors of Viet people today, or the Bayou Bat Viet people. Oka is often honored as the mother of the Vietnamese civilization. They are also considered in certain circles as the first example of a good separation after marriage, because after they had their 100 children, after living together for a while, they decided that she just didn't like, because she's a mountain fairy, she didn't like the ocean, and he's from the ocean, so he didn't like living in the mountains. So they decided to part way amicably and peacefully, and she took 50 children to the mountains and he took 50 children to the ocean. So the ancient Yu people shared some common traits, even though they are distinct and different peoples, like I mentioned. They lived in stilted houses, they had bare feet, they tattooed their bodies, and this is because a lot of them were seafaring people, so they tattooed their bodies specifically with like images that would be fierce, of like sea monsters, to scare off other sea monsters. They were also skilled metal workers who made really sharp swords, and they held the bronze drum as the sacred symbols of state. So that's why earlier in my slide here, I showed this sacred bronze drum here. I'm going to talk about the Sinicization period now. It's theorized that the Bayou tribes were conquered by the first emperor of Qin about 2,200 years ago. The ancient kingdoms of Nanyu or Nam Vic, so Yu means Vic and Nam means Nam or south, were part of the various Chinese dynasties from 1111 BC until 938 AD, with brief periods of independence. So you can see here, this part here on the map on the right side would be the Nanyu Kingdom, and that's not the same as the current state of Vietnam today. So I'm just going to talk through this slide. I'm not going to read through them. We talk about certain periods of belonging to the north, or in Vietnamese is Bắc Thuộc. As you can see here, various dynasties throughout China's history had also had Vietnam, as you can see here on the map, as a province or a commandery or an administrative division. I want to share a little bit about our language. A lot of times, especially older Viet revolutionaries, when their quotes or their words are translated to English, it sounds like they're talking about my country. But ancient people didn't refer to country, they referred to their land or water or soil. And a lot of times, because of the word country, it can lead some Westerners to conflate what we talk about with nationalism. And actually, the nationalism of colonized people is quite different from the nationalism of the people who colonize. So it's a different story as well, but just want to share that about our language. Okay. So in 938, there's a Vietnamese commander named Ngo Nguyen who defeated the invading forces of the Southern Han state. Essentially, actually, we were already part of the Southern Han state, but Ngo Nguyen decided to break away and secede. And this battle here took place at the Bat Dang River near Ha Long Bay, as you can see on the map here. So another slide with maps. You can see down here at the bottom, if you can see my mouse moving, the Dinh Hai or Tỉnh Hải Quân right here would be where present-day Vietnam is, and Southern Han would be what the polity that had control over this part is. Also, you can see it in the pink here. And the relationship between, you can see here, Ang Nam also in orange on the map here, the Jinghai Circuit at the bottom. I know this is more maps, but I wanted to show this because I want to share the nature of the relationship between Vietnam and China at this time. So every year, Annam would have to pay tribute in exchange for peace and political support. And this relationship was essentially sort of like a vassal or tributary state relationship. At the beginning of the 10th century, China was then domestically plagued and weakened by civil war during what's known as the Five Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period. And so you can see here in the middle of the map, all of these states were fighting against each other, and that gave Annam an opportunity to secede. And at this time, Jinghai, as you can see here, this part in the middle, as I'm moving my mouse around, became a quasi-independent regime ruled by successive Vietnamese warlords and monarchs. So after that battle at the river that I told you about, this part of Vietnam descended into chaos. It was a period of anarchy of the 12 warlords. So there were civil wars, there were fighting between the 12 warlords, and it went for over 20 years. And then finally in 938, this handsome guy on the right-hand side here, Dinh Bộ Lĩnh, finally united all the 12 warlords, or defeated them actually, and established what is called Đại Cô Việt, or the Kingdom of Đại Việt. So this time Vietnam was still not called Vietnam, and so you can see here what it would probably look like at the time. So I'm gonna go now to further south and talk about like the area that's currently divided into nation states, which you may not recognize, but this part of Southeast Asia had gone through different ruling empires. So you can see the Khmer Empire, the kingdoms of Ayutthaya, and I'm gonna speak a little bit more on how Vietnam took the shape that it has today. I think there's a little lag because I'm not able to advance. Oh, okay, here we go. So here is how Vietnam territorial expansion changed from like roughly the year 100 or 1000, excuse me, to 1900. And in Vietnamese, this is a period called Nam Dinh, which means expansion to the south. You can this is probably impossible to see, but if you had a higher res version of the map that I have, you could see the year that this took place. I apologize, on my end there's a little lag, so I'm not speaking as fast as maybe I should. Okay, so the present day Socialist Republic of Vietnam was declared on July 2nd, 1976. So this is on the left-hand side, you can see the various kingdoms, the various states from about roughly 2000 years ago to what it is today. So you can see the difference. I'm just going to keep speaking, but the next slide, you'll see some maps and some pictures, an aerial view of the land in Vietnam. People are one of 54 ethnic groups in Vietnam. Our ethnicity is actually called Kinh, and the word Kinh in Sino-Vietnamese means capital. It's used to describe people living in this kind of capital area, the convergence of people by the Red River Delta, roughly about 2000 years ago. Not sure if it's on my end or yours, but okay. Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with the lag here. You can see here again, this Red River Delta right here. Today, this area is known as Hanoi, meaning literally from Sino-Vietnamese, inside the river or surrounded by rivers. So we're sort of river people. Like I mentioned, Vietnam is a multinational country with 54 ethnic groups. The Kinh Việt people account for 87% of the country's current population of about like 98, 99, 100 million people. And here are the emojis drawn by a Viet artist of all the 54 ethnic groups in Vietnam. So if we could, we would have all of these emojis on our phone. The central part of Vietnam today used to be the Kingdom of Champa, as you can see here on the map. And then on the left-hand side, you can see Chen La and Funan, which later will become the Khmer Empire. Champa, as you can see here again, was the collection of independent Cham polities that ruled from 192 to 1832. So at the time that Đại Việt, as you know the history here, came into power, Champa suffered a series of stagnation and decline. And the last strong Cham king, when he united the Cham lands in 1372, he sacked and conquered Đại Việt from the sea. And they set the city on fire, seized women, jewels, and silks. And when the Champa kingdom went on decline after his death, the Vietnamese came back and began a war of conquest to take revenge. So as you can see on the right side here, like the Champa kingdom also came up north to invade, and then the Viet kingdom came south to re-invade again. After independence from China, basically Vietnam became a centralized state, and a lot of historians think that the centralization of power was the reason why Vietnam was able to fend off and also conquered Champa later. You can see here some of the old Cham temples. You can visit these temples today in Vietnam when you go to the central part of Vietnam. Also, I mentioned earlier the Khmer Empire. The Khmer Empire stretched, from the tip of this Indochina peninsula, all the way to Myanmar and all the way to southern China. And Vietnam also has I'm not going to be able to go into it here, but there were also rivalries. And this is the extension of the Khmer Empire after it also sacked the Champa kingdom. So again, I just want to reiterate that the current shape of these modern nation states are pretty recent. And the fact is there are so many ethnic groups living in Southeast Asia. It's a really, really, really diverse region. For example, Indonesia alone has over 1,300 ethnic groups. So the reason why, I also wanted to mention the fact that migration also happened, and it has been happening since time immemorial. So people always moved around. So for example, on the left-hand side here on this map, you can see the migration path for Hmong people, and the fact that today they live in Vietnam, China, Laos, Thailand, and Myanmar. Okay, I'm gonna travel back in time And you're going to be like, why are you talking about this? But it's going to be relevant in a minute. This is the Treaty of the Tordesillas in 1494 between the Spanish Empire and the Portuguese Empire. And it divided the newly discovered lands outside of Europe to solve a dispute when Christopher Columbus came back from his trip. This treaty basically carved the land in the Americas, except for Brazil, to be under Spain's control, and Asia, except for the Philippines, to be under Portugal's control. And the papal view at the time was that because they had the right to do this, God-given right to do this, because Christians had the right to capture, vanquish, and subdue the pagans, the enemies of Christ, and put them into perpetual slavery to take all of their possessions and property. So this was in 1494. And so then we have this European colonization map of Southeast Asia. And then we have this map, in the mid 1800s when we get to French colonization known as Indochina. I'm not going to go through everything here. If you are interested, I can share with you some of the dates later. But basically, in the mid 1850s, the French came and attacked Da Nang, which is in central Vietnam, right here where my mouse is. And the French then, over the years, established French Indochina as a colony. In 1940, Japan then became kind of a dual ruler with the French. So essentially, Japan had full control over Indochina, but Japan would let France run Vietnam, or Indochina from an administrative perspective. And there were multiple reasons for Japan to want to occupy and colonize Indochina, mainly due to resources, rice, and also to cut off supplies into China. In September of 94, the last emperor of Vietnam, Bao Dai, basically said, I will hand over my power to the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, and Ho Chi Minh declared independence. So I'm just gonna go through this really quickly. Essentially, this is the letter from Bao Dai, who said, I'm going to step down. But the French, after World War II, wanted to come back to recolonize Indochina, and the US decided to help out France. So this was its justification. And I'm going to now pass it over to Min to talk about the First Indochina War.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna cover two really hefty time periods in Vietnamese history in about 10 minutes. So please stay with me. There's gonna be a lot of dates. I'm gonna try to make it as digestible as possible. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of interventions from a lot of different players. All of this happening in Vietnam, but with larger implications. So the First Indochina War, with British backings, the French forces came and declared French authority restored in Cochin China. And then during there's actually two phases of the French's tactics in Vietnam at this time. Near the end, they were going with this narrative that they wanted to yellow the war, implying that in previous years, the wars had been mostly conducted and carried out by white people, which is simply not true. It hasn't always involved Vietnamese people. So then in May of 1954, the Viet Minh defeated the French at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, which is something that is still celebrated to this day in Vietnam, leading to the Geneva Conference. So July 1954, the Geneva Conference to establish what's gonna happen next with Vietnam. And like I said, there were a lot of international players. And so long story short, the people at the table were Great Britain, Soviet Union, France, the People's Republic of China, South and North Vietnam, and the US, who technically, well, they'll become the issue later, but at this point, the US is here as an observer. So the people of Vietnam actually doesn't want to divide the country into two, right? Each side had claimed to Vietnam as a whole country, but were pressured to establish a demilitarization zone. So on the part of the Western proposal was at the 18th parallel, and then it was pushed back by the Viet Minh at the 14th parallel, and then it was finally settled at the 17th parallel. And so this is the North and South Vietnam that we know, that most people know in the history that we're taught. But I really want to reestablish that this is not a division into two different countries. We have to keep in mind that both of these sides wanted to, had claims to the country as a whole. Okay, yes. So no foreign troops could enter Vietnam within the 2 years period. And then there will be a re-election that is based on what the Vietnamese people wanted to do going forward. So during this time period, there was a lot of interference from the US to try to sway this upcoming election. So one of the ways that they tried to do that, because the demilitarized zone allowed for people to move in between these two sections of Vietnam, basically, but there was a disproportionate amount of people moving from the northern half to the southern half, and this was used as evidence of people saying of the US saying that, oh, the Viet Minh is mismanaging its people, but actually it was because of the US creating Operation Passage to Freedom, which was responsible for transporting over 300,000 people from north to south, and the ongoing propaganda effort to motivate people to migrate. And the goal was to boost the Catholic base and the population of the South before the reunification elections. So the CIA ran the propaganda campaign to get a large amount of people to move south. And Ngo Dinh Diem, who is the president of South Vietnam, told the US about the limited capacity of the South to receive people, and the US basically said, just do it. Like, it was imperative to maximize the population to sway this election. And so, okay, let me move on. So it's really, really important to I think there was a question in chat earlier that FJ had asked about why is like nationalism important for colonized people? And it is, one of the reasons is because there is to this point, the West still assumes that there is no self-determination on the part of the Vietnamese people. That, you know, this quote from Westmoreland, the Oriental doesn't put the same high price on life as does the Westerner. So it's just this total denial of Vietnamese self-determination. Okay, next slide. Ooh, I have 5 minutes. Okay, we gotta go. So just advance me to the Second Indochina War. So in October of 1955, Ngo Dinh Diem deposed the last emperor of Vietnam, Bao Dai, and proclaimed the formation of the Republic of Vietnam, which is what we know as South Vietnam. But this is a US puppet state, obviously. And so the United States decides to support Ngo Dinh Diem because it is a puppet state. And President Eisenhower again decides to pledge support to South Vietnam. So again, this ongoing legitimizing of South Vietnam as the Vietnam, even though, you know, the country wasn't even really like cut into two, it was just a demilitarized zone. And then Diem was deeply unpopular with the people, and he refused to hold national election and traditional village elections for fear that the communist candidates would win. And I just really want to reestablish that the Viet Minh were actually really popular with the people at this point, because during the famine created by the Japanese occupation, the Viet Minh were the only group who attempted relief efforts. So Diem gave back the rich absentee landlords and the land that has previously given to the peasants. He was wildly unpopular. on August, in August 1964, the US falsely claimed that North Vietnam had attacked one of its gunships called the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And this basically was the claim that let Congress allow Johnson to declare war. Then this resolution was the ongoing justification for why the US was aggressing on Vietnam. So the tactics of the US in Vietnam is called a war of attrition. Kill count was basically the measure for success. The United States wanted to wipe out as many people as possible without regards to literally anything. Body count was the only thing that mattered to the US. And it was not only this, the ongoing war did not just affect Vietnam, but Hmong people in Laos as well. From 1959 to 1973, the CIA trained Hmong tribesmen to fight against communist insurgencies in Laos. And about 35,000 Hmong people were recruited for the war effort, and their key objective was in thwarting attempts by the Vietnamese armies to make major inroads into northern Laos and slowing the movement of supplies on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. As many as 20,000 Hmong soldiers died during the Vietnam War, and Hmong civilians who numbered about 300,000 before the war perished about by tens of thousands. And after the Americans left Laos in 1975 and the communist Pathet Lao gained control of the country, the Hmong were quickly overran by communist forces who later launched a campaign to eliminate the minorities, particularly those who had assisted the Americans during the war. Hmong villages were burned, and by some estimates, thousands were massacred. So it was just a mess in Southeast Asia at this point that had really deep implications on not just Vietnam, but on surrounding Southeast Asian countries. Okay, so in 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, removing the US from the conflict in Vietnam. The US got to declare victory, which is bullshit. But in reality, it had become an increasingly unpopular war because of all the time and effort that the US has put in, and the public was becoming more aware of what was going on in Vietnam. In April 30th, 1975, the war officially ended. And in the aftermath of the war, hunger destroyed infrastructure, harsh treatments by the new government, poverty, economic sanctions. There was a lot of things going on that made life extremely difficult for Vietnamese people at this time, including but not limited to sanctions, extremely harsh sanctions by the US. And so this is a picture of the top left is Hong Kong refugee camp, and then the bottom is Camp Pendleton. And just briefly, I really want to establish that refugees and immigrants from Vietnam who come to the US because of diaspora of the empire don't all share the same backgrounds and don't all share the same views. Where it's not a monolith experience at all. So the first wave, we can divide this into three waves, three major waves. The first wave in 1975, these are considered refugees, but they consisted of mainly military personnel, educated professionals, and their families, those who generally sided with the US during the war. And when they were resettled, they were mostly sponsored by churches, white upper middle class neighborhoods. And the goal here was to get them to assimilate. The key word here was assimilation. And the second wave from the late 70s to early 80s, fled by sea or by land under extremely treacherous circumstances in what's known as the Indochina refugee crisis. So if you're thinking about boat people, this is where this is the time period where that would be happening. And then during the third wave is 80s and 90s, and a lot of these people were no longer considered refugees. They were considered immigrants or economic immigrants. But these were mostly people who did not have high education, former re-education camp detainees, and the majority of Montagnards, people from Central Highlands of Vietnam who served as frontline war fighters for the US, were resettled at this time. And because their efforts weren't successful in assimilating earlier refugees, these people were resettled in lower economic income neighborhoods, a lot of previously red line neighborhoods that consisted of other non-white people. Okay, yeah, that was that was the wars and refugee resettlement. We are out of time, so any questions we'll have to save for the Q&A, but thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, y'all, for summarizing your very long and rich history in such a short amount of time. I know that the learning does not stop here, and that we're really excited as ILPS to continue to build with y'all. Yes, and we will definitely be touching on a lot of the essence points y'all covered in our Q&A portion. So this isn't the end, but I'm going to pass it off to Irene to introduce our next speaker.
Yes, thanks, Fran, and thanks again, Song Tu Si. Really appreciated that. Our next speaker is the Black Elephant Party with Speaker Ed Hampton representing that organization. The mission of the Black Elephant Party is to teach youth of African descent their cultural, economic, and political history. This process is focused on preventing the growth of criminal and reactionary mentalities that can lead to acculturation, division, poverty, incarceration, mental illness, and/or death. By promoting self-determination through political education, entrepreneurship, and life skills, Black Elephant programs are the key to helping African youth become healthy adults and progressive world citizens. So very excited to introduce Ed, and I'll hand it over to you.
Peace, everybody. How you doing? Hope you're doing great. I know we don't get a lot of responses. But yeah, that was just read the mission of the Black Elephant Party. And we're focused on really helping defend our people and teach youth like archery, and coupling it with our history and the different liberation movements that happened all over the world. We're a Pan-African minded people, and we understand that Pan-Africanism is something that all African people, especially youth, need to be understanding, as we also couple it and build a culture of defense within our communities. We also take women to the gun range. We know women are the first teachers. We make it free for Black and African women so that we can make sure that our first teachers are teaching our children, putting into them a positive form of learning about weapons from a positive area, because we know in our communities we deal with a lot of gun violence. I myself grew up gang banging. I lost a lot of friends in the streets. I got a lot of friends locked up behind miseducation. So we know that getting to our first teachers a positive idea and positive ideas, and with a historical context, would change everything that's been going on in our communities and stop what's happening. We're gonna move on to the next slides. I keep things pretty short and brief, so I'm pretty much just gonna be reading from these slides. I like to really just make it plain for folks come in and out. So the pillars of African liberation. In America, we know that we have been attacked in several areas. So in the Black Elephant Party, we have consolidated those targets to 4 areas, which we deem cultural pillars: self-defense, survival, life skill programs, holistic culture, and cooperative economics. These are the areas all Africans against imperialism domination are fighting in. What will hold these pillars together is holistic culture, and that is to say natural culture. For my people, which are new African, Afro-American, Black Americans, whatever you want to call us, the most important thing we can do is build and support holistic programs that heal our nation from the damage caused to from the damage caused due to cultural disconnection. Otherwise, we will continue to exist in subcultures of imperialism and suffer from menticide. And this will lead to us perpetuating our own destruction through the psychological warfare that imperialists have waged through media coupled with lower class impoverished condition. An example, promoting slave culture and clan culture as a rites of passage to Black African youth. And you can just see through, hip hop, through entertainment, whatever you see on TV that usually has Black people in it, the majority of it is genocidal to our people and to our culture, and it really takes us out of balance with who we are and what we originally came from. But for this 2,700 year onslaught that has been happening for 2,700 years, I just said it, but yeah, so really reconnecting with our culture and building holistic programs is something that we're really focused on. And but like a big thing for us is defense, because we know 100 years ago in when Tulsa, Oklahoma was bombed by its own country, first country to bomb its own city from the air. We were left defensive. We had cooperative economics going, and that's one of those pillars. We had it going, and it was bombed from the air by our own country. So for us to even get to cooperative economics, survival programs, holistic culture, which holds all that together, we got to have self-defense, and that has to be the outer core to protect this inner core that will germinate our future renaissance, which we're on our way to creating. Next slide, please. Amilcar Cabral. I don't know how many people have heard of this man, but he's he's arguably one of the greatest revolutionaries of last century, and definitely one of the most important intellectuals of last century. So anytime I talk to people about the movement, I always try and bring his name up so people can go and research and bring their minds up to a different level, because he was really with it. He was one of the founders of the PAIGC, which was the Party for African Independence for Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau. He was assassinated in 1973, and about 6 months after they got independence through the Carnation Revolution, about 6 months after he was assassinated, they got independence, and yeah, he helped create a study group that brought forth the liberation movements for Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde, Angola, Mozambique, and they created a group, CONCP. I gotta get the acronym, the name for that, because it's different in a different language. But Sao Tome was a part of it too, so it was 5 altogether. But yeah, he was a intellectual, agricultural engineer, and just really one of our greatest minds coming out of the continent. And if you can see a quote right here from Fidel Castro, Comrade Amilcar Cabral was one of the most lucid and brilliant leaders in Africa who instilled in us tremendous confidence in the future and the success of his struggle for liberation. Yeah, and a lot of people have a lot of great things to say about him. But when it comes to culture, he really coined it. He didn't coin it, but he really created these ideas to help expand based off of he studied Marxism, Leninism, Nkrumah, everybody who was putting out intellectual who's putting out intellectual information to really lift our consciousness on the continent and just in the world in general. So in this next slide, I'm gonna read a quote. It's a pretty long quote, but it's an important one that I think everybody should just have in their heads. This is an excerpt from a speech that he gave on national liberation and culture at Eduardo Mondlane's funeral. Was it Edward Mondlane? I'm not sure, but he gave this this speech, and he said, "Whatever may be the ideological or idealistic characteristics of cultural expression, culture is an essential element of the history of a people. Culture is perhaps the product of this history, just as the flower is the product of a plant. Like like history, or because it is history, culture has its material base, the level of productive forces, and the mode of production. Culture plunges its roots in the physical reality and environmental humus in which it develops, and it reflects the organic nature of the society, which may be more or less influenced by external factors. History allows us to know the nature and the extent of imbalances and conflicts, economic, political, and social, which characterize the evolution of a society. Culture allows us to know the dynamic synthesis which have been developed and established by social conscience to resolve these conflicts at each stage of its evolution. In the search for survival and progress. Just as it happens with the flower and a plant, in culture, there lies the capacity or the responsibility for forming and fertilizing the seedling, which will assure the continuity of history, at the same time assuring prospects for evolution and progress and in the society in question. Thus, it is understood that imperialist domination by denying the historical development of a dominated people necessarily also denies their cultural development. It is also understood why imperialist domination, like all other foreign domination for its own security, requires cultural oppression and the attempt at direct or indirect liquidation of the essential elements of the culture of the dominated people. The study of the history of national liberation struggles shows that generally these struggles are preceded by an increase in expression of culture, consolidated progressively into a successful attempt to affirm the cultural personality of the dominated people as a means of negating the oppressor culture. Whatever may be the conditions of a people's subjugation to foreign domination, and whatever may be the influence of economic, political, and social factors in practicing this domination, it is generally within the culture that we find the seed of opposition, which leads to the structuring and development of the liberation movement. And yeah, I wanted to really make sure that I put this quote in here because clearly, you know, for us to move to a place that a place for us to really develop, you know, our movements, then we have to really be conscious of the culture that we live in and how, you know, if we have or haven't broken away from a oppressor culture, because it's so deep in us. And if we're not really looking, you know, we're not really looking within and doing really the internal work, because I mean, that's where the revolution begins, within. If we haven't done that, then we're only going to go into whatever organization, whatever nonprofit, whatever school, wherever we work, and we're, you know, dealing with creating social change, will only be perpetuating oppressor culture. So head to the next slide for me. So in conclusion, when it comes to building solidarity amongst all oppressed people, there must be a strong awareness where new African people are as a mass, and how that mass is the biggest influence to mainstream pop culture on the planet. This is why the foundation of solidarity movements for liberation of all people must be rooted in returning to the source of indigenous culture and all of the lands that our ancestors stewarded. As Amilcar Cabral taught us, a people who free themselves from foreign domination will be free culturally only if, without complexes and without underestimating the importance of positive accretions from oppressor and other cultures, they return to the upward paths of their own culture, which is nourished by the living reality of its environment and which negates the harmful influences and any kind of subjugation to foreign culture. Thus, it may be seen that if imperialist domination has a vital need to practice cultural oppression, national liberation is necessarily an act of culture. So yeah, that kind of summed it up. If you guys want to learn more and tap in to Cabral, I would definitely suggest you look up that speech, National Liberation and Culture, or get there's a book, there's actually two important books. He has a few, but the two important ones are Unity and Struggle, the speeches of Amilcar, and the other one where this quote is in a return to the source. And that's, yeah, I mean, he really laid a lot out for us, and we could really still learn so much from him. Of course, it was the 60s and 70s, so we just take those jewels, those seeds that he left, and leave anything that doesn't apply to the current time that we're in right now, and be able to build and advance our struggles all over the world. And I just want to end off saying, commemorating Black August. This is a revolutionary month for African people all over the world. It was created in San Quentin, and in 1979, and this is I want to say the 43rd year of it, and really just have everybody, it's definitely something for African people, but it's for African people to go out and help organize all of our people towards liberation and to destroy imperialism. So tap in with those you see that do commemorate this month in the right way, because there's a lot of people that are trying to hijack it and make it seem like just, honoring our ancestors. No, we study, we fast, we train, and we organize. Those are the four faculties of this month. So yeah, all power to the people. If you guys want to learn more about Black August, go to our page. Also go to Official Black August. You'll see some of the reposts from our page from the stewards of it who actually created it in 1979. Also go to George Jackson University, and shouts out to George Jackson. He was assassinated 50 years ago this past Saturday. Also shouts out to Chairman Fred Hampton, who's got a birthday coming up on August 30th. Yeah, all power to the people. You guys could bounce to the next person. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate that perspective and the information and resources. Since we have a little time, wondering if you could answer a question that someone asked you in the chat. If you want to wait till the end, that's fine. But the question is, on the point of the extremely divisive psychological warfare that derives from imperialism and capitalism, how does your national liberation struggle build unity with folks that are indoctrinated with capitalist worldviews? And what does a holistic education look like to you?
Well, a holistic education looks like, to me, returning to the source, and this will kind of answer the other part of the question too. But when we talk about returning to the source, our liberation lies in regaining the historical personality of whatever culture we come from. And I know that we've been indoctrinated so deep into capitalism. That's why, so many of our people in the streets who come from lower class culture are killing each other. It's money to survive. You got to have capital to survive in a capitalist system. So for us and for all African people all over the world, and for all people all over the world in general, the goal has to be for us to return to the source, to return to our indigenous cultures. It's all there. If we go deep enough and we find, how we stewarded these lands and how we work together. And for me specifically, I go back all the way to Kemet, which is modern day Egypt. And when I study Kemet and understand how they work together, like the people who you see on these walls and in these hieroglyphs, their main focus was really spiritual growth, and for them to understand who they were as divine beings, because that's what we all are. We're all divine beings on this planet, but this planet got us thinking that we're everything but that, because of how out of in tune with nature that we are. A tree is divine. I'm divine. You know what I'm saying? And we're really one and the same. And that's why we steward, like the tree provides fruit for me to eat. And so, yeah, in Kemet, they would the people were taken care of, like everything, like people's didn't really have to worry about nothing, because abundance was what the society was, and their goals in life, the main goal for the society, for the people to focus on, was spiritual development, so that they could better understand science, spirit, all of it being in one, and how we coexist with the planet. Because I mean, clearly, if you just allow shit to run rampant into raping every land, you see what we get. We're getting global warming. We're getting all this like. And one thing that I really learned from our ancestors in Kemet was that they knew that their civilization was going to fall, and they knew that the world was going to be out of balance. So this is why for thousands of years they built these monuments, so that at some point we can go back to the source and understand how the first renaissance on this planet, which was ancient Kemet, modern day Egypt, was created. So understanding who we are and going back to, you know, what our ancestors did in all of our lands and how they stewarded those lands is the key for us creating these holistic programs. And then from there, naturally, we'll just see how to have alternatives to capitalism. So yes, I hope that answered your question. I'm not the most laced, you know what I'm saying? But I know some stuff, so that's the best I got for you.
Yes, thank you so much. It looks like we also have the question of what role does class play in your national liberation struggle? If you want to answer that now, or again, you can save it to the end if you want to think about it a little bit.
I'm gonna think about that one a little bit. I'm gonna come back to whoever said
Okay.
that at the end. What was their name?
Fran.
Fran? Okay, I'm coming for you, Fran. I got you.
Thank you, Ed. Really appreciate your time and all the amazing work that Black Elephant Party is doing. And everyone will have some links at the end of the presentation, so you all can see what everyone's up to and follow them on social media. So we are going to take a quick cultural break again, and we'll return shortly.
Ayebo, yao, ayebo gezeka, rawe adante nyadawuti, Daawwatu seenaan keenya daawwiti. Daawwatu adameessa daawwiti. Daawwatu ijoolleen teenya daawwiti. Daawwatu seenaan keenya daawwiti. Daawwatu adaan teenya daawwiti. Hawwa Heibar.
All right, hope y'all enjoyed that little break and are getting lots of juice and learning a lot from the presenters and everything discussed here. Our next and last presenter will be Machi from Oromo Youth Association, which is an organization of youth from Oromia that strives to achieve free exercise of their rights to form a legal association to advance social and economic development. They are determined to continue to intellectually and materially support their people in their struggle for their right to self-determination and freedom. So Machi, I will hand it over to you. Thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen for my PowerPoint, so bear with me. Okay. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. Okay. So, okay. Hello, my name is Machi Dima. I'm with Oya Seattle, that's Oromo Youth Association. So at Oya, we mainly focus on what's happening in Oromia right now, because there's a lot going on. So I'll give you guys a little history about the Oromo history, and then I'll focus on like what's happening right now at the moment. So let me start. Okay. How do I go next? Okay. So who are the Oromo people? Oromo people are the Kushtic people who live in the East Africa region known as the Horn of Africa since ancient time. So Oromo, okay, so a little history about Oromo. So Oromo was a guy who gave birth to two sons. Borana and Barentu. So those two sons went and they gave birth to other children, and that's how like there's so their children are like tribes within Oromia. So my tribe is Borana. So I'm one of Oromo's oldest son tribe. So there's 12 other tribes within Oromia, including Borana and Barentu. So all those other tribes, they look up to the Borana and Barentus because we're the oldest, and in our culture, like you get respect based on like your age and stuff like that. So, and then they're the largest ethnic group in Ethiopia. They represent 34.5% of Ethiopia's population. But despite their large number, the Oromo history in Ethiopia is largely ignored and skewed in favor of narrative that focuses solely on another ethnic group, the Amara. Okay. So before I talk about what's happening in Ethiopia right now, let me give it a little background. So Oromo people in Ethiopia, we have been facing struggle in Ethiopia for over 100 years now. Back in the day, like when our parents tell us stories, like it was a crime to be Oromo. So like when our parents used to go to school, they have to like hide the identity. Like they can't say the Oromo name. They have to like use like an Amara name, and they can't speak Oromo. So the Oromo language was banned. At school, if they hear you speak the Oromo language, you either get killed or you get expelled from school. So growing up, most of our parents, they could never like show like their culture or anything like that. So like the only time you could speak Oromo is in your house. And then there's an army who like go around and like they check people's houses to see if you have like if you listen to any Oromo music, if you have any Oromo DVD, any Oromo CDs, anything like that. And if they find that, you get killed or you go to jail, you know? So it was really hard being Oromo back in the day. But still now to this day, like it's still hard. But now like people are like, they're trying to like this generation is different now. Like they're showing like resilience. So like, you know, they're showing like how proud they are. But back in the day, like that was impossible. Any artists who even can sing about the Oromo struggle, they get killed right away. So it's like all of our artists, like they had to like go to like either Kenya or like come here to the States and like have a song out about the Oromo struggle. And most of the songs that came out around that time, it was all about struggle. So like listening to like old songs, it was just heartbreaking because it's like, you know, it's just like that's all people sang about. Like till this day, you know, it's just every song you hear is just about struggle. And it's just like, when are we gonna have our freedom from Ethiopia, you know? It's sad. So recently there was the Ethiopian government killed one of our singers, one of our activists. His name is Hachalu Hundessa. Hachalu was really young. He was in his early 30s when he got killed. He got killed a year ago. So he got killed on June 29th. And so right after he got killed, like Ethiopia just became hell. Like the Oromos, like they've had enough. So everyone like went back home and they're just so sad because Hachalu was really like someone who spoke for everyone else who couldn't speak for themselves. He was very unapologetic. Like he didn't really care about anything like that. So the reason why he got killed was he went on he did a news a news interview, and he was talking about how he has a song coming out and he was gonna come to the US, to North America, to do a tour. And in his song, he was talking about how like back in the day, like Menelik, I don't know if you guys know about Menelik. Menelik, they used to come, he was an Ethiopian dictator back in the day. So he said how they used to come to Oromo with horses, with donkeys, and then steal Oromo's horses and then claim those horses as their own. So he was talking about how like the Ethiopian never really had horses. It was Oromo's horses that they were stealing. And I guess like the Amaras, they worship Menelik. So they were like, oh, how can you say this, you know? So a week after his interview, he got killed. Yeah, so his death really, like, it really hurt all of us. Like till now, like even me, like I'm in denial about it. Like I can't believe it, you know, like the day like we found out, it was just on the news and like everyone was crying. We had like an emergency community meeting and everyone was just so sad for like a whole month. Everyone was just in disbelief, like, you know? he was just someone that like we didn't really see going anytime soon, because he did so much for our community, and like he was someone that we all look up to as our generation. Like he was like, for me personally, he was someone who connected me to my Oromuma, because listening to his song and just like watching him speak so proudly about being Oromo when he knows that how dangerous it is in Ethiopia, he didn't care, you know. He had opportunities to come to America and like run away and stuff like that, but he was just like, no. He said, even if I die, I'm gonna die in my hometown. I'm not gonna run away. You know, he's like, if they're gonna kill me for being Oromo, he was like, God made me Oromo. He was like, I'm proud, you know. So him dying, you know, in his own homeland, just because he was Oromo, just because he spoke truth, you know, it was really hurtful. It was something hurtful for us, and something that we realized that, you know, like it was just enough. So this is a little background story about Hachalu. Like I said, he was a singer, songwriter, and civil rights activist. So he got arrested when he was 17 because he had a poem about like being Oromo and how he was proud, you know? So he got arrested, and then he wrote his first album in jail while he was in jail. And right when he got released, he released the album. And right when he released the album, he got beaten. They broke his leg. They arrested his family, and it was just a lot, you know. But that didn't stop him. So that motivated him to write his second album, you know, saying like, you know, like one day we're gonna have freedom from the Ethiopian government, this, that, you know. And then he came to America. He toured America. Everyone just loves him because he's a people's person, and like you just resonate with him a lot because, you know, he was someone that we all aspired to be, because like most of the people in Ethiopia who are Oromo, they were scared, you know. Obviously, you're not gonna live up your like you're not gonna give up your life knowing that you're gonna die. You know, most people are like, you know, like they're very careful with everything they did. He wasn't scared at all. So so he so he was working on, like I said, he was working on an album before he died. His album was it's called Mal Melissa, and that basically translates to like what's wrong, you know. And in his album was released in June 29, 2020. Uh, uh, so that was like his anniversary, the date of his anniversary. And in his last album, he talks about how like he was just like how like Oromos are like soft-hearted people, like we're very gullible. That's why, you know, we still didn't get our freedom yet. He was just like, you know, just like it's time to fight back now. And he was just like, you know, like we've had enough of it and stuff like that. So that's about Hachalu. And then so right when Hachalu got killed, so the day after he got killed on June 30th, the Ethiopian government arrested over 100 Oromo people, saying that like, oh, they're saying that, oh, Hachalu killed they're saying that Hachalu was killed by these people, the Oromo people. So they arrested them. They arrested four citizens, including 2 Saddle residents. So while this was happening, this was a year ago. So every day we're doing protests. So it was during COVID, so we couldn't really do much. And we're going to we were writing letters to the Senate every single day, you know, telling them how like 2 Seattle residents are arrested in Ethiopia for, you know, they took their passport away, they couldn't talk to family, they couldn't eat, like they didn't have no food and stuff like that. And one of the guy, so the Ethiopian president right now, he's not really a president from what I see, because his term was over, and then everyone who was running against him, this guy really jailed everyone who was going against him. He put everyone in jail who was his opponent. And when it came time to run, he was just like, oh, I guess nobody's running against me. And then he declared himself a president again. And he said he's going to be a dictator for another 40 years because his mom told him when he was a kid that he's going to be a king or something like that. And he's going to like live up to his mom's expectation. So that's something about him, the current president. His name is Abiy Ahmed. And yeah, so legit everyone, like it doesn't matter what region you're from, anyone who said they're running against him, he just jails all of them. And I don't know, I just think like it's sad because like, you know, and then like nothing is really like can be done about it because like, you know, everyone is just scared of their life, and he's controlling like communication. So like he just turns off network at any given moment. And us here, you know, like we're a family back home in Ethiopia, so like we get really scared. We're like, you know, are they okay? Every day, like we have to call and just check in with them and just make sure that they're okay, you know. And sometimes it's really hard to get network because the network is always down. So it's like we get worried so much out here, and it's not safe to go back because if you're Americans, because the Ethiopian, they closed their border to American citizens during election, so we couldn't go back and see our family and stuff like that. That was really sad. Okay, so a little bit more about Oromo history. So Oromo culture and language, so like I said, it was banned, and their identity stigma became invisible and unnoticeable. So when my parents went to school, they couldn't speak in Ethiopia. They couldn't speak Oromo or any of that. So most of the young men in school, as early as like middle schoolers, 8th graders, early high schoolers, they joined like the Oromo military force because like they thought like that was like the only way out, you know. So most of us here, like most of the youth here, like, you know, like when we speak about like the Oromo struggle, it's personal for us, you know. Like me, like I lost my dad to the struggle, you know. The government, they killed my dad just because like oh he was Oromo. So when I was born, I think like 2 weeks later my dad died. So like, you know, like I never got a chance to meet my dad because, you know, they killed him just because of, you know, his identity. And because of that, like we had to like cross the border to Kenya, like live in Kenya because my mom was just like scared for her life, you know. So there's just a lot of like just anger and, you know, like just hatred there for most people when it comes to like the Ethiopian history. And it goes deeper than like what anyone can really like speak about, you know. It's like this is like something that like we're still living through. Like even now, like if you go out with the Oromo flag and the government sees you, like you can get killed. But people are not scared to die anymore. Like, you know, like they're just doing it, you know. They're like they've had enough. So it's just like, I don't know, like when you think about it, it just makes you like, it makes me really mad when I think about it, because like this is something that my great grandparents went through, my grandparents went through, my parents went through, and then now I'm going through it. Like my mom, she's watching me going through it, you know. And you're going to protest, like this is something that they did, you know. And like I don't know, like are we gonna have like our kids go through the same thing too, you know? It's just a never ending cycle, and it's just like something that you pray that like can come to an end. But now finally, like we have hope. So this is like our military force. So they're called OLA, or OLF, Oromo Liberation Front. And so right now they're like, there's a lot of like young people joining them, and they're just like ready to fight back. And right now, like from the update that we've heard, they're like taking over like most of like the Ethiopian cities right now, like all the big cities. So it gives us hope to see that, at least, you know, to see that like now like people are like joining, and like now we have like weapons, we have like, you know, a lot of like equipment and stuff like that. Just be ready and just join and just fight back, because like I just feel like there's no other way, because like these people, I just feel like they're inhumane. They're capturing like pregnant women and just like raping them, and then just like killing them and just leaving them and giving them to hyenas for the dead and stuff like that, you know. So it's just like, so like last year when this was like very like new, we used to like see these like images on Twitter, on Facebook, you know, on Instagram, people shared. And like when you watch that, like, you know, like those are like your people, you know. It hurts so much, and like it's just triggering a lot. And like it was just like a traumatizing month for me, honestly. And but now we have hope, when, you know, we're gonna get our freedom. The Oromo military and the Tigray military, they have chosen to like team up to fight the Ethiopian government, because the Tigray people, they're also getting killed. So now with the Tigray and the Oromos teaming up, I don't know, we have hope that, you know, we can finally like overturn the Ethiopian government and get our freedom from them. Because honestly, like we don't even want much from them. Like we just want to just live a peaceful life, you know, and just be proud of our culture and just be able to just walk in the streets, talk your language, you know, wear your flag proudly, and not like, you know, like not feel like you're a target, you know, anything like that. And then there's like also like a lot of like women's joining the force. Like they cook for them, or like, you know, like they're nurses and stuff like that. And most of like these people who are like joining the forces, they're like university students. Like they have like their master's degree, like they have their bachelor's degree, you know. And because in Ethiopia, like you can't get a job because you're Oromo, you know. So it's hard. Like you can have like a master's degree in like electrical engineering, and they could like, you could go to interview, you know, you can like meet all the requirements, and like once they find out you're Oromo, they're like, oh, you know, like no. So it's just, it's sad. So like everyone out of that anger, you know, like they're leaving their lifestyle behind. Like once you join the force, like you have to like forget your family and stuff like that. You like, you can't be in contact with like nobody. So you know, it's just, it's a lot of sacrifices they made. So now they're joining the force, hopefully. Looking forward to having freedom from the Ethiopian government, because we've had enough, to be honest. So yeah. And then this was like a quote that when our Oya was doing a presentation, we used this quote, and I stole this quote from our presentation because I really like, I thought I really like this. So it says, the Oromo people are just completely, what? Sorry. This is, the Oromo people are completely integral into Ethiopian society. It's similar to how a great deal of American groups have been written out of American history. It's why I came to this project, he says. In a lot of ways, there are parallels between Oromo and Black Americans. Both are essential to their countries. There isn't an America without people of color, and there isn't an Ethiopia without the Oromo people. So yeah, that's the end of my slide. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you've learned something about the Oromo struggle and, you know, what we go through. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Machi. Really appreciate that overview. There is a question for you specifically. If could you speak on the unities with other liberation fronts in Ethiopia?
Yeah. Unmute yourself. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So there's not really much unity right now. Even with the Oromo and the Tigray people, it's not really unity like that, because at the end of the day, like there's history there, you know. Even so, before the Amara took over the government 2 years ago, it was the Tigray people who were, you know, on the government, and they were not nice to the Oromo people for 27 years. Like they've been like killing the Oromo people nonstop and just like being so brutal to them, you know. But now, like the only reason now like the military came together is because what the Ethiopian government is doing, like what the current like President Abiy Ahmed, what he's doing is just, is like, you know, it's just crazy. Like he's not okay in the head. He's like targeting like pregnant women, killing little kids, you know. And he started a war with the Tigray people, so they teamed up with the Oromo people, you know, to finally overturn him. But I don't think it's unity in a way that like, oh, you know, like we're buddies. I feel like it's unity in a way that like it's just a strategy, it's just something that's needed right now. Because right now, like the Ethiopian government is killing both the Tigray people and the Oromo people, and they felt like coming together was a way, like, you know, like, do you know how they say like an enemy of my enemy is my friend? So yeah, so basically, yeah, so they thought like if they come together, you know, they'll be more powerful that way, and they can overturn him.
Thank you, Machi. There is one more question for you specifically, if you could just answer it quickly, and then we'll move to questions for all the speakers. What is the objective of the current armed struggle? Are the OLF/OLA fighting for regional autonomy or full national independence or something different?
You know, at first it was national independence, but now like they're fighting to get as you guys know, like the capital city of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa, and that actually belongs to the Oromo people. You know, that was like Oromo's city, and the Ethiopians they just took it and like they named it Addis Ababa. You know, the original name of the city is Finfinne. So now like they're fighting to get back, you know, our city state, really our state, you know, to get it back, and then to have the Oromos claim it. And yeah, so once we claim that, you know, to have like full independence, you know, and then just for it to be like not just like a moment thing, but like a generation thing, you know, moving forward, like for Oromo people to just never have any problem in Ethiopia, you know, to just live a peaceful lifestyle and stuff like that.
Thank you so much, Machi. Really appreciate you sharing your perspective. So we are going to move into questions for all the presenters now. So feel free again to drop your questions into the chat, or you can private message Fran or myself if you're more comfortable with that. But for all the presenters, again, I'm going to start off with this question of, we often hear the mantra, our struggles are linked, or we fight for the same enemy, which is imperialism and US imperialism in particular. But in what ways are our struggles linked, not only in theory, but materially?
And any of the speakers, if y'all feel called to answer this question, I'll also copy and paste it in the chat. But please feel free to, yeah, tackle it. We have until 8 o'clock till the end of this call. So please also try to be mindful of, yeah, like the time, so everybody can speak. Thank you.
I can go first. That's cool.
Totally.
So you asked materially, so I'm just gonna go straight to like the most material thing, which is the US dollar. The US dollar is the de facto currency for doing any kind of trade and doing any kind of business in the world. And a really concrete example is the US. I'm gonna not use the word force, but like strong arms Vietnam into doing what's called a crawling peg, to basically loosely peg the US dollar to the Viet currency, which is Vietnamese đồng. And so, and this results in favorable trading terms for the US. And the Vietnam will continue to have to agree to the terms and also agree to multinational corporations setting up factories in Vietnam, because Vietnam is still paying off of a loan from the IMF from like late 90s to early 2000, because Vietnam was doing a poverty reductions program and needed all of the money. But because of the Asian crisis in the late 90s, all of the countries in Southeast Asia went through an economic crisis because the IMF gave Vietnam a loan. So the IMF has control over where that money goes. And the US has like almost 20% voting power in the IMF, and Vietnam has like 0.25% voting power. So that's like a massive power imbalance in the IMF, International Monetary Fund, between Vietnam and the US. And so the IMF came to Vietnam, or went to Vietnam, and said, we're giving you this loan, but you're putting it in things like construction and telecommunication. We need you to put it into things like goods and services that you can export. And so that's how the US, or that's how Vietnam was able to get money from the IMF. And that's why a lot of the clothing and footwear factories are located in Vietnam. And oftentimes it's the heads of the multinational corporations that set the terms for wages and labor policies. And if Vietnam didn't like it, they would just leave. They would just go to another country that didn't have as strict of a terms for labor. So the factory workers in Vietnam today have to work absurd overtime hours. And that's because these companies pressure the factory owners into not following labor laws in Vietnam. And it perpetuates, this like what I think a lot of scholars are calling modern slavery, and there's a lot of debate and discussions over that term. But essentially, factory workers in Vietnam make like very, 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 very little wage, and very little, have very little advancement in terms of what they're able to provide for themselves. And that's because the IMF pressures Vietnam into taking investments for goods and services to be exported to Vietnam. And the US forces Vietnam to peg the dollar for favorable US trading terms. And Vietnam is kind of stuck in this cycle with the IMF because it owes IMF a lot of money. And that's kind of like the most material thing that you might imagine. And that's because of US imperialism, the fact that the economic imperialism that the US has. And this is on one of our slides, but we didn't really get to, so I'll just speak to it really quickly. But imperialism to us, the way that we define it, is a combination of 4 factors working very tightly and working together in conjunction. So it's economic, like I mentioned, there's military, there's political, and there's cultural powers. So all 4 of these factors sort of work together, like I hate this word, but like synergistically to support each other and to reinforce each other. And that's what's happening with Vietnam and labor issues and factories, etc. I'll just stop there and pass it to the next person.
Yeah, Nikki, thank you so much. That was like really concise and definitely see the parallels of like how like principally like the US imperialism takes economic control of like semi-colonies, especially like in the global South, through like economic force. And I just, yeah, see it really paralleled with like the Philippine liberation struggle. So thank you for speaking on these points. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's a good idea to move on to the next question and then open it up to like Black Elephant Party as well as the Oromo Youth Association. And so this is for like anybody to take. But here's the question. If people do not feel moved to get involved with the national liberation struggle, possibly because they don't have a personal connection to their nation, how might they use their political energy otherwise? What organizations can people join if they are not linked to a particular diasporic struggle? And so I'm gonna type that in the chat.
This question's for me.
Yeah, if you want to take it.
You guys are kind of freezing up. Did you respond?
Oh yeah, can you hear me now? Okay, Ed.
You see my internet.
Oh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is for anybody to take, and if you feel called to take it, please do so.
Yeah, I'll take it because it's related to that question that was asked earlier. Yeah, people do not feel moved thinking about national demonstrations, possibly they don't have a president connection to a nation. How might they use their political energy otherwise? What orgs can people join if they're not linked to a particular diaspora? So just to answer the question earlier first, how does class play a role? As somebody who stole, a nation that was stolen and really create a new nation created. I don't know if people know the term New African. I really am more of a Malcolm man myself. So I like to say Afro-American, just because the fact that he was building an organization of Afro-American unity to unite the Western Hemisphere and of all the diasporic African nation, all the diaspora of the of African nations who were African people who were stolen from Africa. But class is like for us, since we don't have a nation, there's really no international, there's no national liberation. If anything, is more of an international liberation. And for me in particular, and for the Black Elephant Party, our goal is to free the entire continent, because we know that the continent is the bank of resources that the imperialists used to really build the world to where it is right now. Like definitely colonizing all the lands that they did colonize all over the world, but without Africa, they wouldn't have been able to do it. So for me, it's important, to free the continent, and to even get to that place. This is why we focus on like definitely defense, putting defense being a foundation of everything we do, so that it just becomes a part of our culture moving forward, and then taking that holistic culture and cooperative economics and bridging that, because we know that capitalism is going to do what capitalism does. The first capital that really even built America, our bodies was the first capital, and the first things in the first object in the Wall Street. If you go to the bottom of Wall Street, there's cages down there that they held us in. So so bridging holistic culture and cooperative economics is important, so that we're regaining who we are as a people, and then we're building cooperative breaking
Sounds like you're breaking up a little bit.
away. Really, that's why we're heavy on that holistic culture and connected it. And in general, just to answer this question is and I know time. I don't want to take that much time, but in general, really just understanding Pan-Africanism. If that's what who's maybe Hmong or whatever, it's just understanding who you are, in this struggle, and finding where you fit is an important part, and really just joining an organization that can have solidarity, and having that organization go into ILPS or any other organization that's trying to build international solidarity amongst all of us, because at the end of the day, not all of us do have nations, but all of us can create organizations, and we can organize our people towards liberation. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Machi, if you could quickly answer our last question of what role does an alliance like ILPS play in maintaining the long game and victory in our struggles? If you would be able to answer that, and then we'll close out from there, everyone.
Yeah. I would say it's always good to have an alliance, you know, because you have like different audience and you get to like talk to your to different people about your struggle. So for example, like when we had a protest in DC and an Amara person came and attacked an Oromo boy and he ended up in the hospital. And I know like they were part of like an organization, and the organization like they helped him get a lawyer, you know. It's just always good to have an alliance because just for resources, you know, and stuff like that. And then they set up a GoFundMe page for him. So to always just like look out for each other, you know, and just to always know that like you have a group of people who like, you know, who are there to listen to your struggle, you know, who believe in you and who support you in any way that they can. I think that's very strong.
Yes, thank you so much. Our collective power is really like what will get us free. So thank you so much, Machi, for answering that question. As we close out, I really liked Elle's question in the chat. And so if any of the speakers, organizers want to type up an answer as we start to close out, please do so, so that we can continue to support each other beyond today. And that question is, what specific campaigns or projects are your organizations doing that we can support politically and materially? Yes, including education, but also beyond. Are there regular opportunities for education, fundraising, legislative work that your organizations are looking to advance so that we can all support? And so big question, but essence, let us know how this audience and beyond can support campaigns and education efforts that y'all are waging. Yeah, feel free to type that in the chat, but if we can go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, cool. Like we said before, this is our third installment of the National Liberation Series, and we do have another one coming up next month. It's just around the corner. So part 4, mark your calendars, September 14th at 6 p.m. Be there so that we can continue to enrich ourselves and continue to tangibly support one another in the fight for liberation of our peoples. So yeah, jot that down. Cool. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and we wanted to highlight some upcoming events, so you could plug in this way as well for those of you who are looking at ways to support. We have Black on the Block coming up on Sunday, August 29th, which is this Sunday from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. on 23rd in Jackson, which is put on by Africa Town. You're also encouraged to follow everyone's social medias. Black Elephant Party mentioned that their youth archery dates and range dates are posted on their social media regularly if you want to learn more about those. So yeah, please support and engage with those as you can.
Cool. And then for our last closing slide, the essence of today is truly long live international solidarity and long live our people's movements. We know that like mass movements and anti-imperialist alliances are extremely important and vital into our victory. And so let's continue this fight. Let's continue to struggle collectively. Stay in touch with us. Feel free, like Irene said, to follow us on social media, to stay updated on campaigns and other efforts to support. But definitely want to thank everybody for coming out today and learning alongside each other. There will definitely be more opportunities to do so. But can we get a long live international solidarity either in the chat or on mute? And then yeah, we're gonna close out. Long live
National solidarity.
Thank you so much, everybody. Ingat and take care. See you in the
More power
struggle
to the people.
forever. Ingat kayo. Woo.